Girl, my hair is so fine that with these lights, I put a little scalp makeup on, but I can like look like
Did
a
you?
balding baby.
Not
Like look at that.
not
Like
even.
it's
No.
so fine.
It's so funny. Again,
like
it's
a
the things that
little.
we only notice.
I've always been really
The
weird about
things
it since
we
I
only
started
notice.
working on camera. Because once it's like in person, no one would ever even say anything,
Yeah.
notice. But like when you have lights on you, it's just like
Yeah. You
here's
notice
my
everything.
yeah.
We notice everything, and then we wonder if everybody else notices it too. Because they're just
Exactly.
right here all day. I don't see a thing. Also, you're blurry, but still, I trust that you are just fine.
We can kind of see each other. I love it.
Yeah. Just kind of touch you, kind of see you.
Kind of connect. Hi.
Is that you, friend?
Oh man, it's like yesterday was a doozy. How are you doing? Your week,
I'm good.
like have you had a minute to even ask yourself?
I know. Kind of, not really. I mean, the weeks are, this week was a lot of catching up to what I was behind on last week because of the event. And then plus, like, there's, like, I just sent out emails yesterday. Like, it's Thursday and I'm sending thank you emails, but that's all I got. Like, I was trying. I just was slammed.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But good. Yeah. Good overall. Just like, I'm not behind anymore as of yesterday, but I'm also like not quite like some of the things I really wanted to do, but it's okay. I'm like releasing. It's okay. Like, good.
Oh my gosh.
I saw your post yesterday, and was it hard? Was it a hard one?
Yeah, just like I mean, it was a hard one, but also like the day before was not a hard one. So it's like the day before my energy felt really light and really good, and so it's just up and down. I think grief of any kind isn't linear, as we know, and so I'm not like stressed on it. I'm just trying to keep up a little bit.
Yeah.
And like figure out, I don't know, my brain keeps going in different directions of the what ifs and the future tripping, and I've done so much work around that and figuring out how to stay present. I know that I'm capable. It's just not always easy.
That's so real.
We do
The
our
ups and
best.
downs. We do our best. You're going through a lot, and it's understandable that some days would feel lower. At the same time, we don't want to miss the days that don't, so that your brain can remember. I also have moments where I'm okay. I'm at baseline, so sorry.
Yes. No, I appreciate you. Going to the Soul Sisters event was like so uplifting and just fed my heart. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Seriously, it was such a special day, and I'll say it again, like you, the panel, your presence, just even being a friend, like, those events are a lot of energy for me to put out, right? As you know, and I hear you. I was like, I'm the same. I didn't reply to your voicemail yet, but I'm the same after an engagement. Just even the 1 hour can be like, whoo, I need it's like all day, but I did go to sleep really early that night. I think pretty much like at 8 o'clock, I was like, I'm done. So that was a good recharge. But anyway, I am like really happy that you were there, because I was obviously happy you were contributing and got to enjoy, but it also felt good. Just like I have my people, like the people who really know me and believe in me, like on the inner circle side of things. So I felt really comforted and safe, and I really love sitting next to you. Like, okay, I feel good and held in this big space. So good. Okay, good. Yes.
It was such a good
Awesome.
experience.
Yes.
Well, maybe for the both of us, before we get started, we can take like 3 deep breaths together. Just okay. I could use it. I don't know about you.
I could use it too.
With the technology and stuff.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes. Okay.
So
thank you.
Incredible
that
what
feels really good.
Breath does.
I know.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Okay, so today Dr. Coleman. Thank you for being here. I'm excited
Yeah.
about this topic because I think it comes up so often, especially for women, um,
Mhm.
especially for women in minority communities. Everyone in general, I think, has experienced some level of the definition of this. Obviously, we don't want to misuse the term.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that a lot of people can resonate with it.
Mm. I agree.
So maybe to jump in, we can have you just tell us a little bit about what imposter syndrome is and how you've kind of seen and experienced it from your expert point of view.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I was so excited that we landed on this topic. It's a hard one, but it comes up a lot, unfortunately, and there are also just really empowering angles and shifts that we can consider so that we can move more powerfully in the spaces that lead us to have these experiences. So I'm excited to share some tips and tricks as well. This word has become a trending word, which is, I go back and forth with mental
Um,
health terms becoming trends. One, because we know that they're important for us to normalize and people talk about them on just more mainstream basis, which I think is, again, so cool, so important because they're
right.
not as scary, they're not as sticky, and then they help us not feel as isolated or alone in our experiences. We also get to put a name to things when we're like, wait, that's the sensation or the feeling or the experience I've had. There's an actual term for it, there's an actual definition and breakdown of it. Okay, I feel seen, and now I know that there might be something I can do about it. At the same time, folks use terms sometimes in ways that are not aligned with the true definition or experience. So we just have to be mindful of things like that of what is the true definition? How do we use it in a way that feels grounding and fitting to our experiences without necessarily misusing things or just using things out of context or fit. So I think
Right.
imposter syndrome has been a really important conversation. Imposter syndrome is essentially, by definition, is the sensation or the feeling like you don't belong and like you are a fake or a phony. And it's
Um,
really interesting. I was actually thinking about the research that was done. It happened in the late 1970s. There's a lot of actually really great movement around continuing to make more space for women in the workplace, for people from diverse backgrounds in institutions that were not essentially built for them initially. And so when the
mhm.
research started coming out and being done around high achieving women in the workplace, this term was coined because so many women were sharing how they feel like they somehow snuck in or they weren't performing to the ability that was expected of them, which then led them to feel like an imposter. And
Yeah.
so I think that's just a really important grounding to think about what were some of the societal shifts that were happening at the time that this research was being done, and then how all these decades later it has actually become more of a trending, pivotal term to use and explore amongst different people groups. So that essentially is what the
Yeah. Like,
definition and experience is. Mhm.
that's interesting. Like, is it more, I get this is kind of a rhetorical question, but is
Hmm.
it more prevalent now or is there just more awareness around it now?
That's a
Like
good question.
it's obviously been around since the beginning of time, and I love that you brought it back to like women in the workplace because I think that's probably a huge part of the reason. I mean, I saw a headline the other day that was like 2025 is celebrating 50 years of women being able to sign their own
I saw that
mortgage,
too.
like being able to buy a home on their own. And I'm just like, this has not been that long. Like,
No,
I don't,
no.
I know we don't need to sit here and complain and like, but just the recognition and awareness around the fact that like
Yeah.
women have not had rights for that long, and the ability to feel like you belong in a space where
Mhm.
even though we're allowed, but society still kind of pushes up against it.
Yeah.
Um, through equal pay and like things like that. It's like you can be told one thing, but often shown another. And So I think that's a huge part of it, but then also just everyone has their own personal experience of imposter syndrome. Again, I don't want to overuse the term, so like it might not be that you're experiencing exactly that, but an aspect of it on some level, like the feeling of not belonging. Um, what do you
Yeah.
think it is that makes it imposter syndrome versus just the feeling of not belonging, or are they kind of intertwined?
Hmm. It's a really good question. I think the sense of belonging and inclusion, kind of to your point earlier, we've been having so much more emphasis in the workplace in particular, in all spaces, but organizations have been, especially within the last 5+ years. It's become more of a central focal point of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in the workplace. So while DEI has been included in corporate and organizational structures for decades, there has been a peak in access, in focus in the workplaces that we often consume, and so that has allowed us. You asked the question around, like, um I forgot how you worded it, but, essentially, has this been around? Why are we talking about it more recently? And I think we have to also follow, like, what has become what spaces have become more welcoming and able to even have these conversations and address them. So I don't know if necessarily folks have had the word or the term or even the definition top of mind for decades in between the essential and then initial initial research up until now. But in these latter years, I think we're seeing more normalization of these spaces and conversations. And so to tie that back to belonging and inclusion, these spaces and emphasizing belonging and inclusion can help us minimize our imposter syndrome because we're cultivating spaces that help us acknowledge that I am one of the minorities in this space. These spaces haven't always been structured and built for me. We're talking about it and we're actually being actionable about how to minimize the effects of lack of belonging to help me also minimize the reactions I have that are aligned with imposter syndrome. So there's another tack on that I'd like to add in this conversation. There's been a push more for the usage of imposter phenomenon versus syndrome. And I think we can
Oh,
understand that, right? There's something that cannot sit so well with us around the term syndrome as if something is wrong with us.
yes.
So I think that it can take away the individualization and personalization of being an imposter versus structurally and within the greater scheme of things that there is an emphasis on the phenomenon that is happening or that has happened. So it doesn't feel as personal to something is wrong with me. So I think that we should all collectively think about the terms we use about ourselves, the way we feel about ourselves, and a lot of the ways that we can solve for this is externalizing it from being personal to a phenomenon or a structure that is outside of ourselves.
Yeah, gosh, words are so important, aren't they? And I know people
They
get like
sure are.
frustrated trying to figure out what are the new words we're using and what are we not supposed to use. Like, I get that. But I think when it comes to mental health conversations, it is so important because
Mhm.
it really stigmatizes things. And over time, too, when terms are misused, they kind of become like outdated. It's like, okay, let's
Yeah.
refresh this so it feels better for those
Mm,
who are experiencing it, especially.
yeah.
So thanks for saying that. So
Mhm.
imposter phenomena or phenomenon?
Phenomenon. Yeah.
Phenomenon.
Mhm.
Okay. Good to
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Oh, and
Yeah.
Dr. Coleman, you were saying that there's also actually multiple types that I was not
Mm,
aware of.
yeah.
Is that
There
something you want to share?
Yeah, we can break that down a bit. And if I may just really quickly go back to what you said, you're so right. And I think that part of these conversations include that we are all susceptible to different impacts on our mental health according to the environments that we're in and not in. But the reason why this is so important to talk about and really, again, normalize the conversation and the reaction, but also externalize it, is because it really helps us remember that as we continue to push, especially in workplace, but these can happen in any communal space, we think about as places, as workplaces, institutions are pushing for more diversity, which we want to applaud and agree that this is a good thing. We also have to remember that homogenous spaces that continue to be uplifted, we might have folks who say, I feel imposter syndrome too, but the impact, the reaction, and the longevity, meaning how long and how deeply impacted I am, would likely shrink because someone's going to start to feel like an imposter when they're continuing to be the only one, when someone doesn't look like them, when someone can't relate to their personal lived experiences. So there's going to be more second guessing of, I don't have a connection, talk about belonging. I don't have a connection to anybody here. So I feel more isolated. In turn, I wonder if I made a mistake or if I, move a different way, that must just be my fault or that must just because of my lack of inability. Whereas someone might say, I feel imposter syndrome, but there are multiple men here. There are multiple people who I can relate to here. So that imposter syndrome can be easily or more quickly relieved because we connect
Mm,
more outwardly to people who are making us feel essentially safe and have that sense of belonging. So the research that was
right.
initially done and it's been done over time actually shows that if you belong to a homogenous group that's represented, even if you have glimpses of and portions of imposter syndrome, which we all are again susceptible to, the reaction and the longevity is actually going to decrease because we're quickly reminded, I'm not so alone. Actually, there are people I can connect to. But imagine if we are folks who are of a minority gender or minority race or ethnicity or sexual identity or orientation or citizenship, immigration status, right? And we go into these spaces, the imposter syndrome is understandably going to uptick and remain. And so I'll just pause there. I wanted to put that into context, then we can talk about the subtypes.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's really interesting just to kind of dig in a little bit deeper on.
Mm.
And it does go to show why it is harder for minorities to be at that executive level. Like if we're talking about the corporate structure, there's a lot of mental and emotional aspects that are impacting people. And when you don't have that sense of belonging, it's a lot harder to have the confidence that it takes to climb the ladder. And I think that, we reference corporate or like, business structure, but I think that applies to really anywhere in life. So
Yeah.
thanks for that.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. So let's jump into some subtypes. Again, I'm glad you mentioned it, Melinda. There are always new developments happening. And so I understand, like you said, that some people might feel like, what term is politically correct or what are we using now? I always encourage folks to be really open and flexible because it just means we're learning more, we're accepting more, and we're progressing. And those are all positive things. So research is continuing on because of the phenomenon that we're experiencing, and it's been around for some time, but is being talked about more. So I love that this grand phenomenon of imposter syndrome is also being studied more specifically, and we have names to them and we can identify with things more specifically as well. So there are a few. I also want to name that, when we talk about subtypes or uh, you know I feel most identified with this or I see myself in that, that's a really good thing, right? And also terms and categories are just that. We're probably going to see a little bit of ourselves in each one. Not everything is ever 100% per identifying ourselves. That could be with anything, right? That could be with like, what's my horoscope? What's my, right? We could feel like, I
Yeah.
feel like
I
this.
was
I
thinking
told
about like
information like this.
personality tests. Yeah.
Yeah, the test, like, okay, like, yeah, maybe you can align most with something, like love languages, like those types of things that we have. Like, this is my style, but are we ever only locked into one? Not necessarily. So this is
Girl,
just an
I'm like
offering,
every
right?
love language.
Literally, I'm like, yeah, that, a little bit of that, and some of
Give
this, and
me
maybe
them
mostly
all.
this, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just want love. I just want love. Give it all to me. I'll love them and accept them all. But exactly. So let's break these down a little bit. So,
Okay.
um, let's think about this. And Melinda, you're always our great guinea pig here. Let's think we could talk together about which one we most align with too. The perfectionist. So again, these are folks who think I'm never good enough. We equate mistakes with failure. Again, we're probably going to say tick to all of them in a way. I'll include myself. The expert, somebody must know everything before they act. And therefore, because that is such a heavy pressure, again, sounds a lot like perfectionism, right? So they can blur and relate to each other. But this person might avoid taking on new jobs or new roles because there's a risk there that if I go into something, I'm going to have to learn or someone's going to find out that I don't know everything about this. So they tend to sometimes play small or stay in very predictable spaces. The soloist must do everything alone to prove their worth. So again, we hear perfectionism, we hear the expertise, but we also hear a lot of isolation that can happen in imposter phenomenon too. So I'm going to dig deep and not ask for help and really just ensure that someone or other people know that I am capable. And also my worth is often proved through being the solo person moving forward in this alone. The natural genius expects ease in the ways that they perform. So if it's not easy, there must be something wrong
Mm.
with me, right? So if it's not coming to me naturally, then it must be because I'm incompetent. The last one is the super person. So again, superhero, super hero, overworks to overcome and cover up inadequacies. So we can imagine here that there is a high risk of burnout with someone who, again, like, has a bit of each of these, but really tries to save, tries to perform, will outdo other people, will stay up late, will stay committed to projects longer and so forth. But again, all you can tell, all of these have these underlying parts of I'm not good enough, I'm not deserving enough. They're going to find me out. So I really appreciate the breakdown of these. Again, we can probably tell that there's some overlap between each of them, but I'm curious to hear if any of them are particularly landing for you. She
Every
said.
single one.
All the above. I know.
All of the above. I mean, look, I've
Mm,
I've come a long way on working on myself and finding self-love and self-worth and knowing that
mm,
my worth doesn't come with the need for my performance. I'm a
mm,
human being and I can just be, and I've come a long way with that. But yeah, as you were listing those off, I mean, every single one I can resonate with. Especially in my past, but it still lingers there for sure.
mhm. Yeah,
I
definitely.
I
Same.
I think about my career coming up is definitely what comes most to mind. I think most of my suppressed trauma or feelings bubbled up in my work. And for a long time as a result, I really felt like my anxiety or my imposter phenomenon characteristics were my superpower in a lot of ways.
Nice.
Because it drove me to work so hard, but it also drove me to burn out and hit rock bottom and crash out
Yeah.
and have to rebuild myself up.
Mm,
Um, and it's a lesson I think a lot of people have to learn. Um, because unfortunately our society doesn't tell us that we're worthy unless we're productive. Um, and I think depending on your upbringing and how your parents were brought up as well, the tools that they were given. I mean, for me, my mother was the quintessential people pleaser. Um, she was not worthy in herself unless she was doing something for someone else, unless she was appeasing someone else. And then I also come from a Hispanic background. My father's Hispanic, and not to generalize, but there are quite a few characteristics culturally that I think impact, especially women, the way that men speak to women. And so, yeah, there was a lot of pings going off as you were going through those for me. I was just
yeah,
like, oh, I
definitely.
can definitely resonate.
Definitely. It's Melinda, you know this. I use my model a lot, the framework that I developed, the socio-relational healing theory, which essentially builds all of this together. We have the top layer of our system. So a lot of that we're hearing in this conversation around imposter phenomenon and how structurally, like you said, right, in the civil rights movement, which is not that long ago, was really a movement to help women and other underrepresented and marginalized groups have more access to spaces that could help them evolve and help them move forward, to not be able, for women to not be able to have their own credit card, not until a few decades ago, right? We don't think about these things very often, but there are systems that have historically not been set up for people groups, especially oppressed people groups, to be able to thrive and have access to wealth, have access to education, have access to peace and lack of discrimination and violence and so forth, all that comes with that. So we have this top layer here. Then we go into the workplace, professional identities, and even leadership identities, which is the next part of my framework that really explains, again, where we might see some of those societal structural parts of what we navigate come into the workplace and how it can impact our relationship to these things. And then we have our personal relationships. And let's think a little bit about the imposter phenomenon and how, even though that's so individualized, what happens when we're overworking? What happens when we're questioning and second guessing ourselves? Our self esteem drops. We might be more isolated at that, which means we're disconnected from the people we love or who love us. It might impact our marriages, our relationships with our kids, our communities, because we're so in here and we're feeling pretty terrible about ourselves. Also, you mentioned the cultural piece too that can fit in there. What messages did we hear from our families, from our communities, especially our culture communities that told us women can't do that? Our culture will never make it. Look at all the people around us. We don't see ourselves represented because people don't believe in us, and therefore you probably don't belong there. But on the flip side, we can also
Yeah.
see some really positive things, like people being like, go be the first one, go get it, go do it. So there's a lot of positive, and it's not only negative. But the last part on that framework, which I'll continue to share in our podcast to remind us about these different layers we navigate every single day. So much of this is unconscious, but I bring it to surface because we do. We navigate all these layers every single day, especially those of us with marginalized identities. But the last part here is the self. How does that impact our relationship to ourselves? Do we love ourselves even if we don't get it? Even if we have things to learn? Because surprise, surprise, we all have things that we're learning. Every single person doesn't know everything. Like we are going to work, we're going to a new job, we're going to new spaces to learn, we're going to new communities to speak on panels, to all these different things. We have to study, we have to learn, we're going to make mistakes, but there's such high pressure on us, period. And then if we have all these different targets against us, it's going to feel worse. So really thinking about our relationship to self.
Man, I felt emotional while you were sharing
Oh,
that because life is so hard as it is. And that's coming from someone who has a lot of privilege. So,
right.
I'll just name that. But then to put this on ourselves and for society to put this on us is just so unnecessary and so sad and so overwhelming and heavy to carry. Um, I felt this when I was 10 years old. And you just think about a little girl sitting and feeling like she can't just be and she's not enough and she has to prove herself. And it just sucks. It
Yeah,
sucks. I'm
it
just going
really
to say
does.
it.
Yes, it's so true. And we think about, it's not just us, it's not just this, it's not just imagined. People are more emboldened, especially the times that we're living in right now, to cut DEI programs, to say people are DEI hires. It's the same thing that happened with affirmative action. You only got in because of your race or your gender, right? We do these things to water down people's hard work when in fact people with these identities are often working 10 times harder because we're carrying all these internalized pressures of ourselves that say, well, I know because I'm a person of color, because I'm a woman, because I'm not represented in these spaces, because I have a learning disability, that I have to really show up in a way that might make me study harder, might make me, I know folks who are like, I feel so insecure at work. I stay up till all hours of the night preparing myself just so I can show up and feel like these people believe what I'm talking about. We're draining ourselves in the pressure to prove. And again, I believe we should work hard, but please, please, please be really thoughtful, all of us, right? To not think of people just getting out of here as a pass with a pass. That's not what DEI means. That's not what equity means. That's not what affirmative action meant and still has meant. We have to be really tender about these conversations because one, they're false, and two, this does have a severe and significant impact on one's mental health. I mean, imposter syndrome, burnout, these are not terms that you'll find in a diagnostic manual. They're not formal disorders or diagnoses. However, What would happen if someone has imposter syndrome, or experiencing imposter phenomenon? What happens when someone is burned out? It can lead to significant symptoms of anxiety and depression and maybe other
Yes.
severe things. So there
I'm
is a
proof.
lineage here.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to be thoughtful about how we talk about people, how we talk about ourselves, our internalized beliefs, our implicit biases, which again are things that we don't even realize. Most of us would say, I would never want to think that about somebody, but listen to the things that are said, watch what we see on social media, the stereotypes that we've been inheriting since we were little people. I mean, we are always being given messages about certain people groups, so when we have these conversations, all we're doing is bringing them back to surface, checking ourselves and checking our beliefs about others so that we really can have a better sense of knowing that this is not our problem. We are good enough. We're going to continue to work hard. We're going to continue to learn, but our performance does not equate to our self-worth.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm like snapping for you. I teared up during that. I feel like I'm a
It's
little more
true.
emotional today than usual, but I just really resonate with this topic and I think everyone does. And every single time
Mm,
I go speak on a panel or I'm at an event or I'm doing anything like that, I feel like there's this collective um there's this collective feeling of it. Like I'll mention it and someone else be like, "Yeah, me too," and "Me too." Like it's so rare that I actually meet someone who's like, "Oh no, I'm like fully." And I wish more of that for us. I really do. Um, and it's interesting as you were talking about this. I recently had a conversation about my career and I was saying, I don't know how not to give 110% to everything that I do. And I was saying it in a way of confidence, knowing what I can bring to the table. At the same time, I'm kind of holding this duality with that statement as it came to mind when you were speaking, because I'm like, yeah, I guess that's a good way to like hype yourself up when you're talking about, what you bring to the table. But at the same time, like, I don't need to bring 110%. My 100% is wonderful. And that's all I need to bring to the table. That extra 10%, I think, is more of that inner child in me that feels like 100 of me isn't enough. Like I have to find a
mm,
way to give even more than all of me in order to be worthy. Um,
beautiful.
but yeah, that came to mind as you were sharing that. So
I
thank
love
you. I had
that.
a little aha moment
I
myself.
love that. I love that. And it really is a beautiful segue into what do we do to minimize some of these reactions, right? So much of this has been internalized in our adult identity and being, but so much of these experiences we have in the present can also trigger or open up parts of ourselves that are perhaps from the past. And there's really beautiful inner child work that can come up
Absolutely.
if it can make us recall or cause us to recall instances where we felt dismissed or too much or invisible, overwhelming, bothering folks, not smart, right? It can really open up some of those things. And that's the discouraging part, is that folks will likely feel like, when does this ever go away? I worked so hard for this. I got into this space and I'm still being met with the discouragement, whether it's said or not said. It's not in my imagination. I know it's real. I can feel it, even though it's not something we can always grasp because of the systems that really do influence these things, spoken or unspoken. And so some of the beautiful work that you're already describing, Melinda, is being able to sit with ourselves, get in touch with ourselves. It might cause us to open up emotionally and let out some tears. I love tears. I love crying. I love when people cry. I know that not all of us have been socialized to cry, but all crying is the release of stress chemicals that come out through tears. So
Hmm.
releasing some of that, making space. I always tell my clients, what would happen if you tended to these wounds, even not all at once? That's a lot for some folks, so especially if we carry a lot of internalized trauma, but or hold the trauma. But if we do it piece by piece, if we let some of that out, what does that make space for? If we address
Mm,
some of the imposter syndrome, if we address some of the messages that we've held over time, little by little, in therapy, in writing and journaling, in doing some breath technique, in being in community and sisterhood or whatever your people groups are that bring you some resolve and some relief, right? Can we tend to piece by piece? So I love that you're addressing the childlike parts of you that are being brought up, and also how beautiful when we do the work to minimize our reactions to our imposter syndrome or phenomenon or the phenomenon that occurs, our adult self can be called in, and we can talk to little Melinda, we could talk to little
mm,
Christine and say, we I got you. I know we've
mm.
gone through a lot together, but guess what? We're okay. We have succeeded. We are learning. We're tending to. But these parts of you that were told then and that are being told now are just not true. How empowering for the present self to be able to have those words, and how healing for the years and years that we've held on to this little person inside of us.
Oh my gosh. You are like, this is why, like, I just know that you and I are supposed to be working together. I just,
Mm,
everything that you say and the way you describe it, I mean, it
mhm.
also just goes to show how good you are at what you do.
Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the most impactful things that I've done for myself, was learning about the concept of parts therapy. And I
Yeah.
think that's very much so related to,
Good
or
for you.
maybe even exactly kind of what you were just describing, is like
Mm.
the ability to sit with yourself and identify the different parts. So, like, there's an anxious part, there's a scared part, there's a optimistic part, and taking a step back and being able to speak to, for me, I always look at it as my inner child and the different parts of myself that still exist as a result of my inner child. And when I'm feeling anxious, I'll go into meditation and I'll visualize the younger me and having a
Wow.
conversation with her and letting her know how much I love and appreciate the fact that she's here trying to protect me with the
Okay.
anxiety feelings that maybe one time at one point felt very necessary, but explaining to her that she doesn't need to anymore and that she can go. And then I literally visualize allowing her to run to the beach and just have a day of play. And
Great.
that visualization and internal conversation has been so
Mm.
impactful for me in just the awareness around where my feelings are bubbling up from and then releasing them so that I can be more centered and more present. And
Love
so
that.
thank you for the reminder of that, because it's a practice that I maybe haven't been doing quite as much lately, and probably
Mm.
could lean into a little bit more.
That's so beautiful. Good for you. I love that you have the tools and the awareness and even the visualization that you've been practicing a step further, if you would ever want to, if anybody would ever resonate
Please.
with this, is oftentimes I tell my clients, especially clients who did have really difficult childhoods and didn't always get to be playful or get to cry out loud or even have emotional expression, because they were, again, shamed or told too much, or just maybe had parents who didn't have time or didn't have the tools themselves, which is a lot of us. I mean, a lot of us had our own version of parents who didn't know any better, and some of them who did, who harmed us. And so, wherever you are, and in tying up to this conversation in the present, we can address the past. And sometimes, many times, if not most times, they do correlate. So,
Mhm.
to take it a step further for you, Melinda, and anyone else who this might resonate with, is oftentimes I let my clients know, or offer to them to do something really playful. So I'll have clients go
Mm.
to the art section at the local store and buy some markers. One client once said, I went to the park and I sat and I drew in the sunshine.
Yes.
And it might sound like an art activity that an adult would do, but they really tapped into this playful, light side that they really didn't get to have. Other folks buy dolls if that's something that you never got to have. Other folks,
Mhm.
do kind of light things. Sometimes if parent or parent figures are listening or watching, we might also be able to like find that way if we play with our kids, which is like I never got a chance to play and be silly and like roll
Yes.
around on the
I
floor.
think
Like
about
they're
that
parts
all
of
the
us.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
like seeing
so
my
might
my
feel really
siblings be
uncomfortable.
parents.
Yes, yes, and you're an auntie, like, there doesn't always have to be just the parents, like, that could feel really uncomfortable sometimes, but again, I think that also is very healing to the person, again, who is the perfectionist or the soloist.
Yeah.
What parts of you were never allowed to make a mistake? What parts of you were parentified growing up, perhaps? So again, we have systems, but we also have our interpersonal relationships and lived experiences that can maybe sometimes make us hyper vigilant or hyper focused on being very perfectionist or having to do things and figure things out by ourselves. It's a really interesting mixture of how we came to be this way. So ways that we can really minimize that are tapping into some of those behaviors and practices that can really help us relax a little bit. Then it can minimize our anxiety. It could also minimize some of those depressive symptoms that make us feel like, why can't I do this? Why am I not good enough? Why can't I ever get anything right? So we can practice some of those things. And then one more part, coming back to the present, we can use some cognitive behavioral tools too. Oftentimes, I offer to my clients really, again, being gracious with the thoughts we have ourselves, but also really being thoughtful about I actually have more control over my thoughts and behaviors than I give myself credit for. So, there's a technique called thought stopping, where again, we can say, I'm catching myself ruminating. That means continuously, sometimes obsessively thinking about things over and over again, especially things that have already happened. So, I'm going to give myself 20 minutes today. Go for it, brain. Think about it, but that's enough, right? Let's switch on to
Mhm.
something else, right? Doing a lot of cognitive restructuring. So accepting I have issues and struggles with feeling like an imposter. I feel like I'm not good enough. I feel like I'm expect a lot of myself. I accept that belief about myself, but I also don't accept that that is the truth. So
Yeah.
accepting, okay, that's a reality, a real thing that I struggle with, but it doesn't mean we accept the behavior or that it's actually true. So then what do
Mhm.
we need to do to reframe it to accept that this is a real feeling I have, but also this is actually not entirely true about me? So how do we add on different beliefs? So I have a question for you, Melinda. Is there a reframe if you were to say, I know myself, I tend to be a perfectionist or I feel like I have this pressure to be an expert or whatever one that you feel aligned with. Is there a reframe that we can do in real time to say I accept that this is a struggle that I've had and also I'm going to tweak this in one way to perhaps allow for another belief to start to surface?
I it made me think about I always go back to this concept of being a human being, not a human doing. And so I think my reframe could be although I believe that I am a human doing, I am actually a human being. And that's all that I
Mm,
need to be.
I love it.
Does that work?
Beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. What does it call in for you?
I think it just brings a lot of this kind of productivity, hustle mentality culture that our society pushes on us, feeling like you can't just be, but by definition, we literally are meant to just be. Like, I always go back to that. We are human beings. And I think we're so often forced into being human doings in order to feel worthy. Um, And so, yeah, that it calls back into me just coming back to the basis of who we are. Everything that we live in and our society and these rules that we make up are made up, right? Like at the end of the day, all I know is that we're a part of nature. And what does nature do? It just bees. And so that's kind of where I try and pull myself back into. And so it's this reframe of like I was saying, I don't need to be 110%. I don't even need to be 100%. I can just be what I am today, and that is enough.
Beautiful. Good for
Yeah.
you. Good for you. I'm hearing a lot of, right, the
I mean, I say,
reframe and coming
but
back to present. At the same time, those are right, those are shifting beliefs, and those are also tools that you have and are continuing to add to your toolbox. And so you're really great at really being present in your body. And sometimes when we notice, again, the anxiety, the stress, the heightening of our emotions coming up, now you have some tools that maybe you had deep down, but now you're calling them into consciousness. So that's right. They might feel like they're just words or just this thing I said. When they're top of mind, now we can be more conscious to pair them with some of those sensations that get activated when we're in our imposter frame of mind or
Yeah.
frame of being, and have that as a match, and it can start to minimize some of those beliefs and then hopefully some of the symptoms that might be paired with that. So it's really
Yes.
beautiful. Again, we don't think of it that way, but that really is what we're doing when we start to do some of the cognitive shifting, the belief shifting, noticing our bodies more. Um, and then we see what can happen. So there's so much power in that. The last thing I would love to really share, I know that we're getting to close, is the idea of extending past ourselves and not so much only the direction of this is not my issue, this is a systemic issue. That's very important. We've highlighted that today, which can also serve us. But I'm also thinking about expanding outward into calling in other beings, other people who have given us the language and the belief in ourselves that maybe we don't always have. And so
Oh.
they can be accompanied with us. We can bring in our support system when we are having a hard day, when we are not always feeling like I just have the energy or the will to power through some of these hardships that I'm holding or these beliefs that are coming at me or this struggle I had at work with this individual, right? Like we're real people and we don't always have that in ourselves, even though we're doing our part to practice that. So I'd love to see if we can close on a note of calling in one person that would help us, who has given us some of that voice that we don't always have ourselves, and maybe we can bring that along the way. So, do you have anybody that's coming to mind? And I will give one as well.
I mean, you.
Oh,
I feel like,
oh, I love
there's
it.
so many women and people in my community who really show up for me. Oh my gosh, my cats are so reckless right now. Elvis is pushing the camera tripod, so it's like bouncing. Elvis. Um,
Elvis.
but as you were saying it, I've been thinking about, just our friendship and how we send each other voice notes. And I feel like I'll be having a rough one and you'll hype me up, or you'll be like second guessing something and I'll be like, no, girl, you got this. And those
Oh,
friendships go so far. And so you are definitely on that list.
thank you.
Yeah, I think it's the
Beautiful.
women in my community, like the women that I've met
Wow.
in my professional community that I like go to
Mm.
lunch with or exchange texts with, and I'm just like blown away by how you and they can make me feel when I forget who I am because I'm that bitch. I just need to be reminded occasionally.
Mm. So, such a really important reminder how powerful words can be, how powerful taking the time to tell somebody, even 1 second, few seconds, a text message of just a
Yeah.
reminder, I see you, I love you, you're a powerhouse, keep going. Again, doesn't always have to be related to our success or our output, but that also matters too, especially if we are
Yes.
high achieving or really motivated by our career and work in that way. But it could just also be,
Yeah.
like you said, the being part. I think you're a really wonderful person. I see you. You're so beautiful. You're so wonderful. I honor you.
Yeah.
There is so much power in the words and the time that we take. Some of us don't always have the words, but we show up. My mom wasn't so much a words of affirmation person. She's the person I'm calling in and thinking, but she was always
Mm.
there. And that's one, and
Yeah.
she even, I know you all know that my mom passed away, but some of the things we talked about in her latter days before she passed was I wasn't always good at telling you. She was really courageous to tell me this, but like I wasn't always good at verbalizing to you how I feel about you.
Wow.
But I really tried with my actions. And I was like, that's so true, and we don't always get those conversations with our loved ones. But I was grateful
Oof.
because otherwise I could internalize it as my mom didn't really, she was encouraging, please don't get me wrong, but not
Yeah.
always like the super lovey dovey, I believe in you, baby, go get it. So like, that just wasn't her style. But best believe my mom was at every single thing I've produced, always by my side and all the different things, having my pep talks, even though her pep talks were sometimes like, do this, don't do that, right? But she was directional and she believed in me. And I carry her along with thank you for calling in you, our friendships, our sisterhood. And even if
Mhm.
we are folks listening in on different genders, who are your people? Right? Who are your people that will lift you up, or the voices or the actions that we can carry with us when we are feeling down? So we can call on a variety of things to help us shift out of some of those beliefs that are from the systems to the internalized beliefs in our self portion of that diagram I've shared, to some of the things that have been told or displayed to us throughout our upbringing that haven't always lifted us up. We have to bring in the voices and the actions of the people and the memories that also can combat some of those more negative or unhelpful belief systems too.
Yes. Thank you. That is so true. I
Right.
mean, community is everything.
Really,
Yeah.
truly.
And I mean, I think it
Yes.
goes without saying how this conversation and this topic impacts the beauty industry and self-image. And it's kind
Yeah.
of, we didn't specifically touch on that through the conversation, but I think it innately speaks for itself how closely related they are, because the way that we view ourselves, both internally and externally, are going to impact our well-being and how we perceive ourselves and how we compare or don't compare ourselves to others. And so
Right.
I really hope this conversation was helpful for everyone listening. I know I had some ahas and it was helpful for me. So
Mm.
thank you, Dr. Christine, so much as always for your
Oh my
time and your
goodness.
expertise. My
You're
cat is
so
literally
welcome.
attacking my headphones. They are reckless.
Oh my gosh, look at the cutie pies. Ah, that's
They,
okay. We
they
welcome
want to
you too,
go.
baby.
Yeah, talk about those who lift me up. I
Oh,
I don't know what I would do without them.
oh,
I
very
love you,
sweet.
Dr. Christine. Thank you for
Love
your
you too, babe.
time.
You're
Appreciate
so
you, and I
welcome.
can't wait for our next
Thank
session.
you. Likewise. Thank you.